Hello, are you here to debate?
I am.
All right. What's your name and how old are you?
My name is Jason, 43 years old.
Okay, Jason, what are you here to talk about?
I'd like to go for number two.
Okay, what about it?
Um, I think that gender and sex are absolutely related to one another, and wanted to know what you wanted to think or what your ideas were on the new long-term study about transitioning and how it demonstrated that the suicide rates increased over studies longer than 10 years.
Okay, so two things. One being that nobody's making the claim that gender and sex are not correlated. Second, what's the name of said study?
Um, I'm not sure. It was a national study. It was done in Sweden.
That's not what the Sweden
I was
study says. And the Sweden study's
there's
not
a
new. The Sweden study was done years ago, but that's not what it says.
yeah the study in Sweden was mentioned by the John Hopkins
Yes, that's not what the
professor.
Sweden study says. Especially because I'm sure you haven't looked up the amendum that the authors of the Sweden study put out like a little bit after they put out the original study, which says, "Hey, too many people are misquoting this study and saying that that's not and saying things that we're not saying." The Sweden study shows that the risk of suicide is higher than the general population, but it's still lower than prior to gender affirming treatment.
Well, it also alluded to the fact that in the long term, gender affirming surgery doesn't help because
Does
there's
not say that
still
anywhere in the study.
a biological reality
Doesn't
that
say that anywhere in the study.
they are not men or women,
It
and
says
that they
that
are
nowhere in the Sweden
pretending
study.
they're
Literally
pretending to
says
be
that
men or
nowhere.
women,
Says that
and that,
nowhere in
and
the
that
study.
well,
I've read the Sweden
I
study countless times. Countless. I've read the Sweden study front to back. None of the stuff you are saying is in the Sweden study. None of it.
well, that's weird because I was listening to a podcast. There was a doctor that wrote a book when Harry became Sally, and he was directly quoting
Yeah, he was quoting it incorrectly.
and
It,
how the new medical consensus is
mm-hmm,
that it doesn't work because
mm-hmm.
society does not confirm people's mental delusion,
Great. Says
that
that
they're the
nowhere in the Sweden
opposite of
study.
their biological gender
Yes,
and
it
sex.
says this nowhere in the Sweden study. Just FYI.
But I mean, doesn't that make sense
No, it
that
doesn't.
science would confirm that
No,
if
because
you
that's
are
not what science says.
disassociated with your biological sex, that there's a mental issue and that it should be some kind of counseling and treatment psychologically rather than mutilating your body
So first and
and
foremost,
pretending to.
psychiatric or mental health treatment, mental health care is the very first thing you get when you get gender affirming care. I don't know if you knew this because I assumed you haven't actually looked up what goes into gender affirming care. But mental health is like the first step. It's the very first step
So how are they approving hormone blockers and things for children?
because there is a benefit for people that have severe gender dysphoria for treating that dysphoria. And the only known way of treatment of dysphoria when it's severe enough is medical gender affirming care. That's the only confirmed treatment.
How do we did we start treating dysphoria by reaffirming the person's delusion?
That's how most dysphorias are treated. You
Well, I
treated a
mean,
dysphoria by affirming the person and their identity.
okay, well, what if someone identified as someone who is, and I've seen not documentaries, but I've seen like little segments on YouTube about people who believe that they're a quadriplegic,
Yeah, so you're talking
like
about bodily integrity disorder. One of the treatments for
okay,
bodily integrity disorder is to surgically amputate the part of the body that is causing the distress. Yes, that is one of the confirmed treatments for bodily integrity disorder.
I there is absolutely no way that would be a treatment. So you can go into a doctor and say, hey, I believe that my legs are amputated from the kneecap down.
No,
And
that's not what
the
people who have bodily integrity disorder feel. Somebody with bodily integrity disorder, or it's like bodily integrity identity disorder. It's BIID. People with BIID feel like a piece of their body does not belong to them, and it causes such immense distress that it can lead these people to self-harm or suicide. So if and there have been so many cases where the removal of the limb removes the distress, like completely. So what tends to happen is if your case of BIID is severe enough where you are going to risk mutilating your body and or because there's a difference between surgical amputation and a mutilation. So if you're going to mutilate your own body via self-harm and you're going to like cut off a limb where you could potentially die, yes, sometimes it's easier to cut off or it's safer to have a doctor surgically amputate that part of your body to alleviate this as opposed to you killing yourself.
I mean, aren't there medical risks with amputating someone's legs and,
There's more
you know,
medical risks in somebody cutting off a limb themselves. Hence why most of these things are a benefit risk analysis. So you look at the benefits compared to the risk. So yes, if somebody is at risk for cutting off parts of their body, it is safer for a doctor to do this in a controlled environment than somebody to do it in the middle of like a mental health episode because they are so distressed by having BIID, which is a diagnosable disorder.
but so diagnosable but treatable is actually to amputate.
That is one of the treatments if it is severe enough. If it's not severe enough, sometimes like different therapeutic methods to reincorporate the limb back into the person's body image can be done. But again, this, by the way, wildly different than what gender dysphoria is. It's two vastly different things that when it comes to the way that they are perceived in bodies are completely different. Somebody with gender identity disorder is so far removed in the way that their brain is processing from somebody with gender dysphoria. It's just, they're not the same at all.
Well, it's still a mental disorder where you have a problem with the biological reality that you're born with.
No, it's not about having a problem with a biological reality, right? There are plenty of trans people who are fine having penises. Just exists. There are plenty of trans people that are okay having breasts, right? That exists. The problem is when it comes to the way they are seen in that society views these gender models and the expression of said gender, this influences a person's schemas as they grow up. Schemas are just your brain's way of categorizing information. So if you have distress enough that your gender identity isn't aligning with these things, especially during puberty when these things start to become more pronounced, the question is, do you want to make it easier or harder for trans people as they grow? So for instance, a trans girl going through male puberty is going to have her voice deepen. She's going to start growing hair in places that is more masculine presenting. She's going to get taller, possibly get broader. She's going to like develop a more predominant jaw. These are things that tend to happen during male puberty, and these things will cause her further distress in her gender dysphoria. Now, not all trans people have diagnosable gender dysphoria. Not all trans people have that distress where they need medical transitioning. But for the ones that do, because it is a safe and effective means of treatment, to say we shouldn't do it is just kind of holds no bearing. Not unless you can provide the actual empirical data behind the harm that it can do. But this data does not exist.
So, yeah, why is it the people are, it's a mental illness. So obviously there's going to be
it's
some
not a
issues.
mental illness.
Well, it absolutely is a mental illness, man. I mean, you just said that people who have mental illnesses, one of the treatments are cutting off their limbs,
so the reason why,
cutting off their appendages.
So hold on. Gender dysphoria, when you look at the DSM-5, the DSM-5 is very specific in mentioning that gender dysphoria is not a mental illness. It's in the DSM-5 to better provide care for these people, right? But it
Now, was it
is not a mental
reclassified
illness.
in the new DSM from being a mental illness?
Well,
Gender
so it
dysphoria
was
labeled as a mental illness
reclassified from
in
gender
prior
identity
DSM?
disorder because we recognized that gender dysphoria and gender identity disorder are two different things. So the way gender dysphoria
So in a prior
operates in the
DSM,
body
yes or
is
no, in a
different
prior
than
DSM, was it mentioned as a mental
no,
illness?
because it wasn't in a prior DSM. Gender dysphoria
Well,
is only in DSM-5. Does not exist in any other DSM.
so it's a brand new thing that just came out. When was the DSM-5 released?
The DSM-5 was like 2013 or something.
Okay, so for the history of the world up until a few years ago, gender identity was not mentioned as
No,
a mental
gender
illness in the
identity
DS.
disorder is a different
Okay.
thing with a different diagnostic criteria that they realized was not effective when it came to treatment. This is why, by the way, the Sweden study is looking at gender identity disorder and going, okay, there seems to be, when we're looking at gender identity disorder, there seems to be an issue with how treatment is provided for this. There seems to be an issue with how this can be diagnosed. It seems like the criteria is a little too broad. So what they did is they strengthened the criteria on it. They reclassified it to gender dysphoria because they recognized that it's just a completely different thing. Right? So they reclassified to gender dysphoria, and then they changed the care model around gender dysphoria, and they changed the diagnostic criteria. This would be like if somebody was
Okay.
like,
So in your
"Oh, this would
opinion,
be no, hold on. This would be like if you said, "Oh, well, you mean I mean I know that you say it's cancer now, but before we just thought it was blood humors. Before we thought it was bile in the blood. So now you're saying all of a sudden that this cancer thing exists, right? Diagnoses change as we evolve in medical understanding. So diagnosis is changing,
well,
and being more streamlined is not a bad thing. It's a good thing.
so can you explain gender dysphoria then? Is that still mentioned in the DSM?
Gender dysphoria is in the DSM-5. Gender dysphoria is when there is a marked distress between a person's gender identity and the physical representation of their sex. So the physical representation of this being genitals, hormone production, phenotypic features, things
As a
like that.
mental illness?
No, it's not classified as a mental illness.
And neither is body dysmorphia, BID.
Bodily integrity disorder is classified as a disorder. That's why it's called bodily integrity disorder.
So gender dysphoria has never been classified as a mental illness?
Gender dysphoria, no.
Then why were they treating that psychologically?
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about wasn't seeing a psychologist mandatory part of anybody who transitions?
You don't need to have a mental disorder to see a psychologist.
Well, no, but I mean, if you are getting a surgery to I coincide with your chosen identity, I mean, you have to see a psychologist first and foremost. You said that, didn't you?
Yes, you don't need to have a mental disorder, a mental health issue. You don't need to have anything to see a psychologist or a therapist or a counselor. Right? Typically, when you're going to a therapist, a psychologist, or counselor, it's just so they can diagnose you with gender dysphoria so you can get treatment, right? But what they look for is they look to see if during a 6-month period you showed a consistent, persistent, and insistency, or consistency, persistency, and insistency on your gender identity and the distress that your gender identity, that is caused by your gender identity not aligning with your sex.
Right.
But like, I go to therapy and don't have a diagnosable. Well, that's not true. I went to therapy for a long time without having a diagnosable anything, right? Prior to getting diagnosed with like ASD, I went to therapy all the time, right? People should just go to therapy whether or not they have mental issues or not.
Okay. So, do you think that children are able to make life-changing decisions at a young age if they had some sort of I guess the point I was trying to make with the reason you see a psychologist before you undergo a surgery is to make sure that you're not mentally ill?
No, it's just to make sure that you are consistent, persistent, and insistent on your gender identity, and how that gender identity affects your align how that gender identity's alignment with your sex affects your ability to operate on a day-to-day basis, how it affects it's how it affects your life, basically, whether it causes that immense distress between your from this thing, and to see if what you might need is social transitioning or medical transitioning. Most trans people only ever socially transition. It's the minority of trans people that medically transition, save for possibly like hormone, like HRT. HRT is becoming more available.
Why is the suicide rate higher?
The given reasons for the suicide rate being higher in the trans community is for societal and family stigmatization.
Okay.
So when they're stigmatized by society,
that's because people, feel it's a little odd that, if someone doesn't associate with a biological reality, that they're somehow delusional, because reality is reality. I mean, we like things about it, we don't like things about it, but we accept it for the reality that it is.
Being trans is a reality, right? Your identity, and how that identity is in your head is something that society can't tell you is real or not. Society cannot make declarations about someone's
Bugs Bunny dancing in their living room, but that doesn't mean that other people will see Bugs Bunny like that person does.
You recognize, though, that seeing Bugs Bunny is a reality for that person, right?
Yeah,
that would be stupid to say that they don't see this happening, right? That's why most if you have somebody with hallucinations, auditory or visual, and they are going to a mental health expert, if you had a mental health expert that was like, you're not seeing anything, stop, you're delusional, that mental health expert would be fired. The first thing you do is you affirm that these people are seeing and hearing these things. They absolutely, because they are. Whether you see them or not does not mean that this person is not seeing them.
Well, I mean, all you did was really, so look, you went on a whole separate tangent about how, they affirm things. And all I was saying was that you could understand how society would not affirm someone's, gender if it's different from their biological gender, the same way that people don't affirm Bugs Bunny is dancing in the living room for people who actually have auditory and hallucinatory.
They do affirm that. If somebody went to a mental health expert and said, I see Bugs Bunny dancing on the table, they would say, okay, I believe you. You see Bugs Bunny dancing on the table. They affirm this. What do you think gender is?
Okay, so my question is...
Wait, I just asked you a question.
Bugs Bunny is not dancing on the table.
I just asked you a question.
Let's get to the bottom of it first, because Bugs Bunny is not dancing on the table, bro.
To them, he is. This person's reality is that Bugs Bunny is dancing on a table.
They're mentally ill. And the reality is Bugs Bunny's not dancing on the table, sir.
Yeah, but we're talking about perception, right?
Exactly.
We're talking about the way someone perceives the world around them. You cannot tell somebody that the way they are perceiving the world is incorrect, because all that does... No, you can't. That's not how mental health works.
2 + 2 is 4.
That's not what 2 + 2 is 4 is not the way you perceive the world around you. It's not the way you visualize.
If you have 2 oranges and you put another 2 oranges down, you now have 4 oranges.
Unless somebody is having visual hallucinations and they don't see oranges, right?
Because
this is
they're
the whole
mentally ill.
I don't think you understand what a mental illness is. Can you define mental illness for me?
Yeah, a mental illness, for example, would be someone who had audio and hallucinatory visions.
Great. So by this, I could say that anybody who's claimed that they've heard God speak to them, or heard the Holy Ghost, or heard any of this is mentally ill and having a hallucination.
Absolutely not, because life is as much spiritual as it is physical.
If they are If they are hearing something that nobody else in the room is hearing, this would be a hallucination. They would be mentally ill.
No, because we have thoughts. You know what people are talking about, and you can try to
if they are hearing something that is not physically in the room, if they are hearing someone speak to them who is not in the room, what you just said, your logic is if they perceive reality separate than what is actually going on, they have a mental illness.
I think that they're talking about when their conscience speaks to them, or that's how they hear it.
No,
it's a figure
people
of
that
speech,
specifically
man. You're not
say,
meant to take a figure
God
of speech.
spoke to me. God told me this.
Yeah.
God physically
It's a
spoke
metaphor.
to me. No, it's not. There are plenty of Christians.
Yes, it is.
There are tons of Christians who believe God literally speaks to them.
Okay.
So they have mental illnesses.
Then that means that they obviously did not hear God speak to them, and they're saying that they,
they're mentally ill.
Or
Per you, they are mentally ill. Per your logic, they are mentally ill.
People believe that inspirational ideas or technological breakthroughs are inspired by God, and that God spoke to them, but they don't literally mean God said, "Hey, I need."
Per your logic, they are mentally ill.
Transistor up to this receiver, and you will, create a radio. They don't actually believe that God spoke to them, but they're saying that God spoke to them and gave them the inspiration and the idea.
Per your logic, they are mentally ill. They are having an auditory hallucination. They are hearing things that are not actually happening.
Okay.
What about people? What about people who claim they see Jesus? What about people who claim that Jesus came to me in a vision? What about these people? Are they having visual hallucinations now?
Well,
are they mentally ill?
Well, I think they have a low sodium deficiency. Personally, there was.
So they're mentally ill.
Larry Flint wrote a book, and he spoke about that he spoke to some of the best psychologists in the world, and they have divine revelations, and they found out that there's a correlation between these people that see Jesus and people that have a low sodium content.
Yeah, I asked you what a mental illness was. You said when you see or hear things that aren't there. So if they are seeing or hearing things that aren't there, whether or not it's religious or not, they're mentally ill.
Yes, if someone saw Jesus, they are having a mental illness. Yes,
so when Christians say, I spoke to God, God talked to me, God came to me, God did, they're mentally ill.
Yeah, I'd say that they are.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that we're on the same page, that Christians are mentally ill.
Absolutely, but
how should we diagnose this?
Two issues.
What should we call the disorder? What should we call the disorder?
Sake, in the pursuit of truth, I will say that yes, they're mentally ill. Jesus appeared to them, and
what should we call should we call this disorder?
I don't know, brother. I mean, you're the one that seems to be pretty up on definitions. I'm hoping that you could give me a
Christian identity disorder. How's that work?
Okay, there we go. CID, man.
Now, here's the fun fact about trans people. Trans people don't see or hear things, so they're not mentally ill per your purview.
Well, they do. If they look in the mirror and they see themselves as a beautiful woman,
No, here's the problem. You are confusing gender dysphoria with body dysmorphia. Trans people don't look in the mirror and see their body any differently than it is. Their body looks exactly how it looks to the rest of the world. All that happens is they have a distress about how that body looks. They just don't like the way their body looks. They don't like the physical representation of their sex.
So my question is if 98% identify as a certain way related to their biological sex, and one person looks in the mirror and looks down and sees something different and goes, I'm like the 98%, that's a mental illness.
Did you not hear what I just said? They don't see their body differently than how it is. So per you, they don't have mental illness. You said mental illnesses are when you see or hear things that aren't there. When a trans person, like for an example, if a trans woman has a penis and looks down, she still sees a penis. She doesn't not see a penis.
Then it's not a female.
Yeah, what do you think?
And trying to trick people into thinking that it's a female. That's
when did I say female?
Isn't it?
When did I say female? I said trans woman.
Well,
when did I say female?
Well, you just said at the beginning of the conversation that biological sex and gender identity are correlated with one another.
Yes, they are correlated. It's about whether your gender identity aligns or disaligns with your biology. Just because they're correlated does not make them the same thing. In order to correlate with somebody, in order for two things to correlate, they cannot be the same thing. That's how you have a correlation. If they were the same thing, we would say that they're the same.
But they have a connection to one another, hence the correlation. So what I'm saying is that I believe that the suicide rates are higher in trans because society does not participate in their perception of what they consider to be reality. and that becomes a big problem.
I don't think you understand. I don't think
Pretends
you
to be a female,
understand that your gender
and
identity is not indicative of what society views you as. For instance, let's say you went to a country where everyone sees you as a woman. Everyone in that country, nothing's changed about you, but everyone in that country thinks you're a woman. The 98% of people in that country think you're a woman. Are you a woman now?
yeah, and I'm doing things that other women do, and I guess if
Wait,
it was
so nothing has
and,
changed about you. No biology has changed about you, but you are a woman
Right.
now, because you went to a society that claims you're a woman.
When I'm in that country, yeah, then I guess I would be,
So gender
considered
has
a woman
nothing to
and
do.
doing
So
things that
per
other women
so
did.
per you, gender has nothing to do with your biology. It has to do with what the world sees you as.
No,
That's what you just confirmed to me. I said if you go to a country where everybody calls you a woman, not the
Right.
98% of people think you are and perceive you as a woman, are you a woman? And you said yes.
yeah, and in that country, it's upside down world where men are considered called women for whatever reason, and then women are called
No,
men.
every
and
other man
in
is a
that
man.
case,
Every
I
they
would
view every
still
other
be a
man, they view every other man as a man. They don't view you as a. They think you are a woman. They said in every 98% of people in this country view you as a woman. Are you a woman now? Yes or no?
You're talking about in this country where men are called women, right?
Nope. Only you. You are viewed as a woman. Other men are still men. You show up in this country. The country is called like From Ya Land. You go to From Ya Land. You show up and they go, well, that's a woman. And 98% of people in this country firmly believe you are a woman. There's no doubt in their mind. Nothing you say can convince them otherwise. Are you a woman?
Well, I drop trow, and
Even when you drop trow, they don't care. They say you're a woman. They don't care what's in your pants. You are a woman to them.
Well, I mean that's ridiculous. No society could.
It's called a hypothetical. This is to test your logic. Your logic was that trans people are not women because the 98% of people don't view them as women and view gender as the same as the sex. So I'm asking you, if you go to a country where 98% of people view you as a woman, doesn't matter what you have, they view you as a woman, are you a woman? Yes or no?
Well, I mean, in reality, I would have to say no because in the rest of everywhere else except this place, I am a man.
Great. So it doesn't actually matter what society views you as when it comes to your gender. What society views your gender as is not what's important. What is important is your own perception of your gender, not society's.
Well, I meant sex.
So you think the only thing that matters in determining gender is what your sex is?
Well, there's a correlation between them, right?
Correlations can work in the opposite direction. So it's correlated because it either aligns or disaligns. The alignment would be a correlation. The disalignment would be a correlation.
And the disalignment would correlate with the mental illness.
Nope, we've already went through this. If I have to school you on this again, it's going to be real embarrassing. We've already gone through that. What you think is a mental illness is when someone sees or hears something that's not there, yet trans people are not seeing or hearing things that aren't there. We've gone through this already.
Well, the perception is kind of similar, because what if someone had a mental illness and they believed that they were like the Queen of England, and so like they constantly kept trying to break into the palace.
So you're changing your definition on mental illness now from what you previously stated it was.
Well, no, I'm fine if
you want to change your definition. If you want to change
mental illness.
Hold on, if you want to change, go ahead. Now lay me out what your new claim is. What your new claim is that mental illness is. What's your new claim?
Whoa, hold on, brother. Now wait a minute. Now are you saying that for the topic of the debate, we can only consider a mental illness to be an audio or hallucinatory?
I'm saying I asked you specifically what a mental illness was, and you said specifically when you see or hear things that aren't there. If you are changing this answer, Fine, but you better be specific, or I'm just going to point the flaws in this answer as well. So, what is your current, your new, the one that you just came up with, definition of what a mental illness is?
Someone who's delusional.
What does delusional mean?
Delusion would mean that someone thought they were the Queen of England and kept trying to break into the palace.
You gave me an example of being delusional. I'm asking you what it means to be delusional. Because otherwise, I would just say, per that answer, the only way you're going to be delusional is if you think you're the Queen of England. What does delusional mean?
Okay. Delusion means that if someone thinks that they are something that they are not, man. And hold on, I just want to say that, like, this whole, you know, to debate a leftist is not really having a debate and a search for truth. It's a chance for you to, like, grammatically correct people, like, aha, I got you. And, well, hold on, the definition that you gave before. And I understand that in order to really get down to the nuts and bolts of the conversation that you should do that. But to a certain extent, man, I mean, you shouldn't cut people off so much. You shouldn't, you should actually engage in a conversation with them.
I'm quite literally engaging in a conversation with you. When we have debates, the words you say have to be specific because we have to be able to understand and convey our language with one another. So when I ask you, when I ask you, that's
what I called.
Yeah. See, this is you just.
I asked you why.
I like how you instead of being able to define what a delusion are now complaining about the way the debate has happened, so you can avoid answering the question. So answer the question. What is you said that a mental illness is when you have a delusion. Yes. So what is a delusion?
Right. I should have brought my dictionary rather than, you know, just my opinions on things. I would have to say that a delusion is when a man puts on a dress and pretends to be a woman.
You gave an example of a delusion. You didn't tell me what delusions are. If I asked you what a car is, if I said, hey, what's a car? And you said Ford, that doesn't tell me what a car is. That tells me an example of a car. So I'm going to ask you again, what does it mean to have a delusion or to be delusional? Your claim right now is that mental illness is when people are delusional. So what does it mean to be delusional or have a delusion?
A separation from reality.
It's not telling me anything. What is the separation from reality?
When people have a separation from reality and they see things that aren't there, or they believe things that are not physically demonstrably true.
Okay. I would then claim that every single person that is religious and believes in Christianity has a delusion because there is no physical hard proof of God. So are they delusional now?
Well, let me ask you a question. You ever seen a flag blow in the wind?
Yeah, that would be wind.
Okay, yeah, but isn't that a demonstration that unseen forces have a effect on?
No, it's a demonstration that wind, as in the changes in air pressure that cause wind to blow, exists. It does not prove a third linking in a chain anywhere. So if you want to make the claim,
it is a metaphor. It's a demonstration of unseen forces having an effect.
I'm not talking about unseen forces. I'm talking about you said that in order to have a delusion, you have to believe in things that don't exist. Well, since we have no physical proof that God exists, everyone that believes in him,
we do.
No, we don't.
Of course we do.
No, we don't.
Well, of course we do.
No, we don't. Fun fact. That's why it's called having faith. That's why it's called having faith.
Energy has a conscious mind.
You have to have faith.
What people consider God or the Creator is a conscious mind. And we demonstrate the principle of a conscious mind. It is considered a divine principle. Some call it the spirit. Some call it the soul. It is a divine principle. It is of a spiritual, not tangible, so to speak, nature.
Prove that. Prove and
that is what a lot of people consider to be religious. And I would have to argue that life is as much spiritual as it is physical. And science
prove that exists.
Because energy is neither created nor destroyed, right? Considering the laws of thermodynamics. Well, one of the principles of energy is a conscious mind.
No, it's not.
What do you mean, no, it's not?
I mean that it quite literally. There's no consciousness in energy. Nobody who actually studies energy as a force is going to sit here and say there's consciousness in energy. You're just saying things that this is what tends to happen.
You have a conscious mind that you're exhibiting right now.
I have sentience.
What do you mean
and
it doesn't exist?
I have sentience and consciousness because of the way that my brain is wired and the way that the neurons in our body are wired, not because of some energy that exists. That's not how that works, right? Now,
Yes,
if you want to talk
because
about like
the brain
neuron
emits
development,
energy.
if you want to talk about like neuron development and things like that, this is a whole different thing than like energy having consciousness. Now, all that's happened
Energy
right now,
is
all
conscious.
that's happened right now is because you've realized you've walked yourself into a trap. In order to prove religion, you are going to spout things that are like improvable, right? That's kind of what
I'm saying
happens.
from a
That's kind of what
scientific
religious people tend
viewpoint,
to
these
do.
are the things that we consider miracles or divine, or I think science refers to them as phenomenon, like gravity and light and other things like that.
Gravity is not a phenomenon.
Big
Light,
Bang,
we know what causes gravity. We know how gravity works. And light is not a phenomenon. We know what causes light, and we know how light works.
I mean, not entirely. We still discover new things.
We 100%
quarks.
understand how gravity works. What are you talking about?
We still discover new things like quarks when
Yes,
it comes to light photons.
Discovering new things does not mean we don't know how these things essentially work. What?
But we still refer to them as phenomenon. That was my point.
We don't refer
Again,
to
you're going on
gravity as a
tangents.
phenomenon. What are you
Let's
talking
stay
about?
focused. Yes, light is a phenomenon.
I have not
Gravity is
gone on a
phenomenon.
tangent. All I'm doing is showing the inconsistencies in your logic. Now, by the
I
way,
think you're
I just
really
want to
just
throw this out
exposing
here.
yourself
I
for
just want to
being a
throw this out
hypocrite.
here. I just want to throw this out here. All of this has been a pivot from you not answering the initial question I asked you, which is tell me what gender is. Define gender. I asked you that like 10 minutes ago, and you still haven't done it. Just FYI.
Okay, gender is someone's perception of their own relationship to the world when according to their biological sex, because gender and sex have a correlation with one another.
Gender is
So
someone's perception
so
of
someone's
themselves.
gender.
Meaning,
All right,
hold on. If gender is someone's perception of themselves, then all trans identity are valid, because to be gender identity would just be your perception of your sex and how that sex orients in your body. So basically what you just said is that if somebody's perception of their gender is that they're woman, it would be woman.
No, because woman is a female.
No. I asked you what gender is.
Yes.
You said it's your perception.
You just said until
You said it's your
2013,
perception.
gender was not explored and identified, and before that, throughout the history of mankind.
What the fuck are you talking about? We've been
woman has
studying
been
gender. We've been
female.
studying gender for hundreds of years. What are you talking about?
Okay, well, they just came up with a new definition in 2013.
Of
Because
what? What are you talking
absolutely-
about?
You
All
just
we
said
talked
the
in
DSM or
2013, all
something
we talked
changed
about
and-
is gender dysphoria, which is just an incongruence between your sex and your body, your sex and your gender identity, which causes distress. That's it. That has nothing to do with like what gender is at its core. What?
No, and what I'm saying is that if someone's gender led them to try to deceive people, being a biological man into pretending that they're a woman,
Nobody is deceiving anybody. Nobody is pretending. You don't even know what gender identity is.
absolutely they're pretending.
They're not. They're
Absolutely.
not. Unfortunately for you, they're not.
Well, unfortunately for you, if everybody died in some kind of nuclear war and 1,000 years from now they dug up the bones of a transgender woman, they would find a man. And they would catalog them as a man.
Here's the beauty. And this is what's so funny to me is like you have a fundamental I won't even say misunderstanding. You just are ignorant in these topics to begin with. First of all, number one, bones.
Ignorant.
Bones are a byproduct. Specifically, the only bones that are different in men and women is going to be your pelvic bone, and this is a byproduct of your sex.
That is untrue, sir.
No, it is not.
The size is different. The density of the bone structure.
Nope, there are plenty of women who are
do you mean,
larger
nope?
than. There are plenty of women who have larger and more dense bones than men. That's stupid to say, and the only reason you would say that is you don't
But that is the
understand.
exception,
You don't
not the rule.
No. You only say this because you don't understand this fucking concept. You don't understand how bone density works. Bone density is not separated via gender.
Don't get to 9, brother.
Bone density is not separated via gender, right? Bone density can be high in men, it can be high in women. No, it is not. We actually see
Of
more
course it
variation in
is.
bone density from the specific regions you live because these specific humans may have acclimated, their bodies might have acclimated to have denser bones based on the regions they live in. Okay? You just don't
Come on, have you ever seen a
understand
pit
this
bull
shit.
fight a chihuahua?
You don't understand this fucking, all you're doing now is
not-
obfuscating to some other fucking shit when we're talking about your misunderstanding on what gender is and gender identity. So let's
I'm
also say,
seriously
hold on,
debating
I'm not done.
on
I'm not
whether
done.
or not having this
I'm not done.
conversation is even productive because I feel like you're delusional.
Yeah,
if you're going to say that
it's not
there's no
productive because you
biological
don't know what you're
difference in
talking
between
about.
men
Yes.
and women.
It's not productive because you have no fucking idea what you're fucking talking about. Yeah, I know this.
I mean,
I've known this for the last 40 fucking minutes. You don't know what you're talking about. The next thing I'll say about
Facts.
bones,
Facts do not care about your YouTube channel.
do you know how many times we dig up skeletons and get the gender wrong? Constantly. Because
How
bones
many
are not
times
a
we
good,
dig up what?
we get the sex and gender wrong when we look at bones. All the time. All the
Sex
fucking
and
time.
gender?
All the fucking time. Happens all the time.
Oh, because you're saying that there's, some bones that we somehow misidentify, and we say that these bones are a male, and in reality we come to find out that they're a female.
Yeah, because your claim was that if we dig up bones 1,000 years from now, we're going to know it's a woman. That was your claim. But guess what? We dig up bones all the time, and we can't figure out whether they're males or females. Right? We have no fucking clue. But again, bones are not a byproduct of your gender. Bones are not a byproduct of your gender. Bones are not even a determining fact about your sex. You don't even know what sex determination is because you're claiming that bones are what determines your sex.
They have a higher density than female bones.
No, do you know that black women have a higher bone density than white men on average?
Okay, I believe it.
So when we dig up a black woman's bones, are we going to assume they're a man?
No, but we're going to assume that the bone density is less than that of a black male.
Exactly.
That's all I'm saying.
Exactly. Thanks. Exactly. When we dig up, first of all, when we dig up bones, we don't look at fucking bone density because by the time you dig up those bones, the density of the bones is probably going to shift because have you ever seen that bones become hollow? That bones become hollow as they age. So the bone density isn't going to be
marrow. I think you need to take a course on biology, man. That would really help your debating skills because there is a biological difference between men and women, and that's all I was saying. I mean, we had to go on this whole tangent.
As I've said 50 times already, there's a biological difference between males and females because we are a sexually dimorphic species. So there are differences in males and females, but we're not talking about males and females. We're talking about gender, which you already admitted was a perception-based thing. Not a physical-based thing. It's a perception.
But the problem is when a biological male pretends to be a female and tries to deceive people, there's going to be an issue, hence why the suicide rate is greater. That's all I'm saying.
No one is trying to deceive anybody. You're just an asshole.
And if it's a mental perception, I think that we should treat that
Nobody is trying to deceive anybody.
Mentally.
People are just assholes. No one's deceiving anybody. People are just assholes. Do you know that trans women, their rates of violence are often higher when they're out, when people know that they're trans? Is a trans person who is outwardly trans trying to perceive someone to you? No, they're outwardly trans. They're outwardly explaining what they are. Yet they still experience violence just on the basis of their gender identity. So where's the deception here? No, it's just trans misogyny that exists in you and most of the other people that are transphobes in this fucking country.
Now, what if someone was walking down the street and trying to pretend or deceive people into something they're not? Like, say, a millionaire.
No,
if there was some asshole walking around saying he was a millionaire and people found out that he wasn't a millionaire, I'm sure he'd be prone to violence too.
Someone existing in their identity is not a fucking deception, right? You are not that special. They don't give a fuck what you think about them. Their identity exists separate of you living your life. You're just a dick.
Why is the suicide rate higher, man?
I already explained why the suicide rate was higher to you. I literally explained it directly. I'll read it here. I'll read it directly. I'll read it directly out of the fucking one of the many studies that we have. I'll read it one of the many studies. I'm going to read it out one of the. I'm going to read it out one of the many. I don't give a fuck if I throw out profanity. If you have an issue with somebody cursing because you can't be an adult and curse words make you fucking panties drop, fucking debate a wall, homie.
No, my panties are tight, brother.
If you have an issue with someone fucking throwing a curse word, debate a fucking wall. I don't give a fuck if I curse. I don't care.
Right.
Debate a wall if you have a fucking issue, bro.
Okay, I'm not debating you.
So stop talking about the cursing. Who gives a fuck?
All right, I'm just saying, man, no need to get upset, man. I'm just
Who's
explaining to you how
upset?
reality works and
Who
the
is upset
biological
here?
differences between men and women
I would
and how
like
we
to
all
know.
can get along.
I would like you to
If we just
explain.
say, hey, men can wear dresses and pretend to be females, then boom, problem
Okay,
solved.
so again, you just have a misunderstanding of what being trans even is in the first place.
But wouldn't
And
that be brave
second,
and wonderful if like a trans like, a
it
man
would be
like would
brave and
wear a
wonderful if
dress
you it
and
would be
just get in
brave
the
and
ring
it
and
would
just
be
box
brave and
as a
wonderful.
man but
What
be
would
a
be
feminine
brave?
man
What
and
would
just,
be
you know what I mean,
brave?
be
Yeah.
proud and beautiful
What
in
would
that?
be brave and
What's wrong with
wonderful?
that?
Here's what would be brave and wonderful. For you to actually educate yourself on this shit instead of just saying dumb fucking shit for the last fucking 44 minutes of my life.
Well, I'm sorry.
You've been shown to be logically inconsistent in multiple things. And every time we try to break
Name
down
one.
to
Hold
it,
on, wait a minute. I object. Name one thing I've been inconsistent on. I've been pretty consistent, man.
you were inconsistent on your definition of what a mental illness is, so much so that you had to
No,
change
we
the
changed the
definition.
definition.
Yes,
No,
that
we
means
already
you
been
were
through that. I don't want
that's
to have
because
to school
we
you on that
changed
again.
it because you were inconsistent in what it was originally. So you had to go back and change it because you were inconsistent. That's what it
I
means to be
object, Your
logically
Honor, because they
inconsistent.
were both dealt with a
Okay.
mental
Are
delusion.
you going to keep performing? I'm not here for a performance. Either you're here to
Well,
debate or
I
you're
just
here to
wanted to
perform.
object
I need
because
you to answer the question right now. Either you're here to debate or you're here to perform.
I'm here to seek truth and debate.
Okay,
I do not
I
want
don't
to
believe
perform.
you. But let's get back to the topic on hand. You claimed that gender is a perception-based thing, not a biological-based thing. So now your claim is gender is wholly biological. Which one is it?
I'm saying that gender can be what I said it was without contradicting myself, and I'll explain
It
it to you.
can't.
Someone identifies with the biological reality that is their physical sex, then that would be in tune with about 98% of the population. And then you have people who are not in tune with their biological sex, and then they want to perform the opposite role of a different sex, and I think it's offensive to people, and that's why the suicide
I
rate.
need you to define gender again because this is a different definition than what you gave previously. So
Okay,
you
man.
need to define the terms you're using and be consistent in these definitions and not change them every 5 minutes.
Okay, well, I guess I'm just a fucking moron. Is there any way that you
True.
can explain to me what gender is so we can just use that definition? Because what I'm saying is
I'll
still
give
going to
you a
remain the
definition
same,
of gender. I'll
regardless
give
of
you a
what the
definition
definition
of
of
gender.
gender is.
Yep, I'll give you a definition of gender directly out of a neurobiology textbook. Directly what neurobiology and what medical science views gender as. It's a subjective perception of your sex and the way that sex is oriented in your body. It is gender identity is going to be how your mind relates to your sex, not how anybody else's does anything else. So that's it.
Well, I just want people to stop killing themselves.
No, you don't.
How do we do that?
You don't actually want that. If you wanted that, you wouldn't be saying we need to limit gender affirming care.
Well, obviously, there's some kind of mental or benefits in the long term for people getting the proper mental treatment that they need.
Gender
they
affirming
don't.
care is the only thing that we see a marketed lowering of suicidality amongst that population. When it comes to gender identity, in a 5-year span, we tend to see suicidality lower upwards of 70%.
It's still higher than anybody
the
else.
general population because of the ostracization of trans people. I've already read you. I can pull the study back up and tell you why the trans community experiences high suicide rates. What you're doing right now is you're misconstruing causation with correlation.
Well, I'm sorry, but when people kill themselves, I think there's something wrong with them mentally. I don't think that mentally healthy people end up killing themselves. I mean, yeah.
So again, I'm going to say again, you are misconstruing causation with correlation.
Well, I'm sorry. I just don't understand the difference between the two because I assumed that because they were pretending to be something they weren't and society didn't agree with their, I don't know what you want to call it, perception of themselves. And that's why they just decided they'd rather die than have to deal with society and deal with themselves. And, and I think that if they got the proper
all you're doing now is because you've been unable to substantiate your claims, you're just now virtue signaling. And you're going, well, I just believe that I want people to stop killing themselves. And I just want people to be better mentally. This is just a virtue signal. Has nothing to do with the conversation.
World, right?
It's a virtue signal.
Same thing as socialism. Just in a perfect world.
The fuck are you? This is still a virtue signal. It's not addressing the topic.
Okay. All right. Well, you said that gender was directly correlated with sex in the definition because it deals with someone's perception. I don't see how that's
correlating can mean that it aligns or disaligns. Both would be a correlation. I don't think you know what correlation means. I think you think that correlation means that
we see that the suicide rate is a lot lower, and when it doesn't
align,
we see
Christ. Again,
right?
Causation and correlation. The suicide rate is not high because somebody's gender doesn't align with their sex. The suicide rate is high because society does not like when people, as a whole, does not like when trans people exist, and so they ostracize them.
Okay, well,
but I don't think you. I think at this point you don't even know what the words correlation or causation mean.
Hold on, now don't people have the right to make that choice on what they want to see in society and what they want to? You know, like we don't allow child molesters and things like that to, you know, like we ostracize them too.
What the fuck are you talking about?
I'm just talking about if people do things.
The whataboutism here is crazy.
What?
Explain to me how a trans person is causing harm to another person when they exist in their gender identity, like the way that the reason why we don't allow pedophilia is because it directly harms another human being. Do you want to explain to me how just existing in your trans identity harms another human being? You have 5 seconds to do so, and if you can't, I'm going to move on.
Okay, I'd say because it conflicts with people's ideas about reality, basic biological reality, and that's offensive.
I'm going to be so honest. I'm going to cut the debate here. I have never heard something so stupid in my entire life.
Every time you get owned, you just want to hang up the conversation. I've noticed that's pretty typical.
I have never heard something so dumb in my 31 years of life. I've never heard. It's offensive.
Facts don't care about how you feel.
I understand you're a snowflake and you don't like that trans people offend you just by existing. So it offends you. You're so offensive.
I never said they offend me. Obviously, they offend.
You're so offended by trans people that you need a fucking a safe space away from trans people. I don't give a fuck. Right? You're not showing any principled harm.
I never said that.
Saying that trans people exist disagrees with.
Of course they do.
Disagrees.
I didn't say they did.
Hold on.
I said let's get them the mental health that they need so they can incorporate into society,
trans people existed.
Have families, be happy, and stop killing themselves. What's wrong with that, man? Whose side are you on, Joe?
Not your side, stupid. Your claim that trans people existing is going to offend people because of what they perceive reality to be is the dumbest shit I've ever heard. It's stupid.
You just said that that's the reason why.
Here's a question for you. Here's a question.
Because people ostracize them.
Should atheists not exist because their belief might differ from the reality of Christians? What Christians believe reality to exist?
Of course not.
Great. So we've come to another instance. We've come to another instance where your logic does not hold.
What do you mean? I haven't said anything inconsistent. You're the one who keeps trying to paint me into these corners and just end up looking foolish.
We've come to quite literally another instance where your logic does not hold.
My logic has held firm the entire time, sir, and I think that the tapes will prove otherwise. So how about that?
It quite literally has not. Your logic hasn't held so much. Your logic hasn't held so much that you've had to redefine shit multiple times because I keep trapping you in logical contradictions about what you claim the world in reality is. Here's what I want you to do.
Well,
here's what I want you to do. We're going to pause right now. We're going to pause right now. We're going to pause right now. We're going to hold on. No, we're going to pause right now. You're virtue signaling again. You're virtue signaling again. You're virtue signaling again. You're virtue signaling again. I don't give a fuck.
I'm also asking a question.
All you're doing is virtue signaling. Do you believe sex and gender to be the same thing? Yes or no? Do you think sex and gender are the same thing? Yes or no?
Well, absolutely not.
Great. So then trans women can exist. Women don't have to be females because sex and gender are not the same. Thanks.
What? brother, we've already been through this. And when someone pretends to be a female and they're not,
No one's
that's
pretending
why
to be
they're
a female.
ostracized in society. That's why the
no one's
suicide
pretending to be
rate
a
is greater.
female.
Can't we say
No one's
that
pretending
it's
to be a
okay
female.
if men want to wear dresses?
No one's
Isn't that
pretending to
better?
be a female.
If there was
No
someone
one's-
at the Olympics,
Actually,
that
here's
looked
how
like a
much
beautiful
here's how
woman,
much
but they were
people are not.
competing right next to the males
Let me
because they
give
were
you
male.
actual science. Let me give you actual science, and then we can. And then if you want to provide me scientific evidence in the contrary, I'll take it. I don't think you can. I think you're not going to be able to. Let me provide you actual science. Again, straight from neurobiology. Sex is split into two things. There's genotypic sex and phenotypic sex. Genotypic sex is your chromosomal makeup. Phenotypic sex is the physical representation of your sex. So it's going to be your primary and secondary sex characteristics. So it's going to be things like your genitalia, your hormone production, things like that. Things that are not sex determinate, but are determined by your sex. In the medical community, in the scientific community, in the biological community, the neurological community, phenotypic sex, modifiable. Phenotypic sex can be changed. So trans women oftentimes will be genotypically male, phenotypically male, or phenotypically female, depending on if they've modified their secondary and primary sex characteristics, and then their gender would be woman. That is how that works.
But their sex is still male.
Did you listen to a word I just said?
You can't change your sex,
Did you
brother.
listen to a word I just said?
I did.
Then
And
what
I'm
did I say?
saying that
Repeat it
that
back
is
to
where
me.
the problem
Repeat
lies.
back to me
is
what I
because-
said.
Yes, you said there's genotypical and phenotypical, and one has secondary sex characteristics like gender, and the other one is related to your biological
What
sex.
did
And what
I
I'm saying
say
is that
about
when the
the-
two
what
don't
did I
co-align
say-
with one another,
What
there's
did
a
I
problem.
say about the movement of genotypic and phenotypic sex? What did I say?
What?
What did I say about the movement of genotypic and phenotypic sex? What did I say?
We've already established I'm not that fucking smart, man. All right, so what
Great.
did I miss?
I'll repeat it again.
Thank you.
Your genotypic sex is an immutable part of you. Your phenotypic sex is a modifiable part of you, right? And your gender
Okay.
identity is an immutable part of you. So so a trans woman can be genotypically male, phenotypically female, with a gender of woman.
Yes, and what I'm saying is I understand that, and that the problem is when the phenotype is different, and what the genotype is.
Phenotype
that
and
is
genotype are not always genotype and
by
phenotype
society.
do not always align. Your genotype is not always going to align with
And
what
I'm
your
saying when
phenotype
they
is.
don't align, that's where the problem is. Thank you.
No, Jesus Christ, dummy. Fucking A, bro.
Isn't that why they're ostracized?
When they're ostracized because people like you don't like them.
Well, no, let me ask. I never said I don't like them. I never once said that. I'm saying that there's a problem here.
I'm
Let's get
inferring
to the
this
bottom
based
of it.
upon the
now let me ask you
conversation
this.
we've had.
Do people in society whose phenotype and genotype correlate and are directly in line with one another, are they ostracized within society? Is the
You realize
suicide
that
rate among
you realize
higher-
that genotype and phenotyping alignment has nothing to do with that, right? For
Of course it
instance,
does.
a trans woman pre any medical intervention, their genotype and phenotype is typically going to align. Because I don't know how I can say these things multiple times and you don't understand what genotype and phenotype mean. You are incapable of understanding it. Genotypic
Just because
sex
you say that
is
doesn't
just
mean
your
it's true.
chromosomes.
Okay,
Has nothing
we
to do
have
with your gender
freedom
identity.
of religion in this country.
I don't give a fuck about
and
religion.
freedom of
I don't give a fuck
religion
about religion.
means that if
I
I
don't give a fuck about your
choose to-
religion. I don't give a fuck about your religion. Genotypic sex is your
Well, we're
chromosomes.
discussing your religion right now.
Phenotypic, nobody's talking about religion. I don't have religion, stupid. Genotypic sex is your chromosomes. Phenotypic sex is the physical representation of those chromosomes. It's the byproduct of your chromosomes. It's your genitals.
Okay, now
it's
hold on.
None
Now,
of
let me just
by
clarify
the way,
so I
genotypic and
understand.
phenotypic sex are not gender identity.
Okay, well, let me just
Fuck,
make
dude.
sure I understand here. Now, hold on. Wait a minute. Okay, so now you have genotypical sex, which is your biological sex, right?
Your chromosomes.
Yes, your biological sex. Okay, you can't change that.
Phenotypic
okay, now
sex
you
is
have your-
also biological. What the fuck? Phenotypic sex is also biological.
Okay, so now you have your phenotypical, which is your how you express that.
No.
Right?
No, it's the physical representation of your chromosomal makeup. So your phenotypic sex is going, and I've already given examples.
That's how you,
your
how you
phenotypic sex.
represent your sex, right? Is phenotypical.
No.
how you express yourself.
No, stupid. I don't know how many times I have to say that phenotypic is going to be things like genitals, hormone production, internal and external genitals, secondary sex characteristics. These are things that
So
are
those
going
are
to
the
be
things that you can't
phenotypic.
change.
No,
So
those
phenotypical
nope.
is what you can't change.
Phenotypic sex is modifiable. You can change your genitalia. You can change your internal
No, you can't.
sex organs. You can change your
No, you
hormone
can't.
production. Yes, you can.
No,
All of these things can be
you
changed.
can't.
All of these
Because
things
if
can
you're
be changed.
taking hormones, you're not
All of
changing
these
your
things
hormone
can be changed.
production.
Yes, you do.
If you have your genitals removed and you have a pseudo vagina put on, you don't actually have a vagina. You have a hole in your body that'll close up.
What do you
and
think a
it'll
vagina
cause
is? What
an
do you think a vagina
infection.
is? What do you think a vagina is?
I think a vagina is a part of a female anatomy.
What is
it? It is the entrance to how females reproduce.
The vagina is quite literally, it's called the vaginal canal. It is quite literally just a hole. It is a hole that leads to and from the inside and outside of their body.
I object because the vagina does not close up if you don't dilate it every day. Because it's
so first of all, there are plenty of women, cisgender women, that need to dilate their vaginas.
Hold on, there's no such thing as cisgender. It's just
Are you fucking
women.
stupid?
What is a
What do you think
cisgender?
Cisgender means
What does
where
that mean?
sex aligns with
Normal?
your gender identity. Stupid.
So just, well, why can't we just call it women then?
Because there are different type of women. We are having a conversation about sex and gender, so we're making distinctions between cisgender women and transgender women.
Yeah, but we have freedom of religion in this country. Like, why should people's beliefs
None of
be
this
forced
has
upon
anything to
somebody
do with
else?
religion, stupid.
Well, it is, because well, I mean, if you believe something, that's what I consider religion is. Like, if you consider that someone, rose from the dead and walked on water, those are things that require faith.
Yes, those would be delusions according to you.
Need faith to believe that.
Yes, those are delusions according to you. So why would I listen to somebody who's delusional?
Vagina is actually a woman.
According to you, these are delusions. So why would I listen to somebody who's delusional?
Well, you mean trans people? Why would you listen to trans people?
Religious people. I've backed everything we've talked about when it comes to trans people via science. I can give you the exact textbooks that I read this shit out of. Can people walk on water, my guy? Can people walk on water? Just answer me this question. Can people walk on water?
No, they don't.
Okay, so then if you have a belief that a man magically walked on water and you believe this truly in your heart, this would be a delusion, according to you, because you're believing something that physically can't happen.
Well, it's a metaphor, man.
No, it's not. No, it's not. No, it's not.
It is.
Jesus quite literally did walk on water, according to the Bible. Well, not a metaphor. He actually walked on water. Here's another question. Can people come back from the dead? Can people come back from the dead?
The story of resurrection, now you're talking about an older African text again. The story of Haru, and what it is it's a resurrection of a family lineage. Because when the son was born, it was the father being reincarnated.
Okay, so Jesus did not rise from the dead.
The conscious mind rose from the afterlife, is what it
Jesus did not rise from the dead and leave out of the cave, that when they came back, he was gone. That didn't happen, like the Bible claims it happened.
Again, you're considering a metaphor, which is Jesus, which is a metaphor for a conscious mind as a physical person.
So Jesus didn't exist as a real person?
Yes. Living and breathing does not get up after it is dead, the soul has left the body, it is not resurrected. It's a well-known fact of life.
So Jesus did not exist as a real person?
For the resurrection of the conscious mind.
So Jesus did not exist as a real person?
Of course he did.
So then it was not a representation of the conscious mind. He did exist as a real person, correct?
Well, I mean, you have a conscious mind, don't you?
Did Jesus exist as a real person, correct? Yes or no?
Jesus is a metaphor for a conscious mind.
Did Jesus exist as a real person, yes or no?
I've already said, no, he didn't.
Okay, so Jesus did not exist as a real person. So people that believe, so the majority of Christians that believe that Jesus was a real person would be delusional. They would be delusional.
I mean, if they don't believe that it's a metaphor and they think that he was a real person, then I mean, yeah, I think that we would disagree on whether he was actually physically.
So the Bible, and believing in the Bible would make you delusional.
I mean, bro, I'm not here to drag anybody. I'm here to drag your delusions, not other people.
So wait, you're not here to drag delusions unless they're my delusions. So you're just arguing in bad faith. Cool.
Okay. All right.
Understandable.
You're right.
You're here
You're
in bad
right.
faith.
So yeah, they're delusional.
Okay, so we understand that Christianity is delusional. So when you claim that I should not believe what I want to believe based on hold on, stop. When I've asked you to explain why the science that I believe is false, you said, well, because it goes against what Christians believe. But Christians are delusional. So why should I care?
When did I say that?
Literally,
because
like
it goes
10 minutes
against
ago.
what Christians believe.
Like
That's
10 minutes
ridiculous.
ago. You said the majority of people don't believe this. The majority of people are Christian. They don't believe this. You said this multiple times.
I did not
per
drag
your
Christianity
logic,
into it
but
at
per
all.
your logic, Christians are delusional. So what does it matter? Why should I care if what I believe goes against people with delusions?
Okay. I have no idea what I don't know. We are right now in the conversation. So you don't care.
In the conversation is that you claimed that people are
you
Christian and they don't believe in this.
Nope. I got it. You don't care what Christians think.
Your claim was that people are Christian and they don't believe in this, so they shouldn't have. So they ostracize people because they don't believe in these things. Yet
Society in general, all over the world, not Christians. Society in general, all over the world.
Yeah, it's not society in general. It's not actually society in general. You did bring
Why is the suicide rate higher? You said because
do I need to pull the clip where you brought up
people like me?
Do I need to pull the clip where you brought up Christianity? Do I need to pull it? Do I need to
pull it,
bro?
I think you're going to find yourself being a hypocrite as usual.
You want to bet?
And everybody watching is going to.
How much do you want to bet me? How much money are we putting on?
Well, brother, we were discussing spirituality.
How much money are we putting on this bet? That's my question.
Dude, I feel like you conflate things to make it look like you're just,
Can you define conflate? Can you define what conflate means? Because you've used that word a lot. You've used that word a lot, and I don't think you know what it means.
It means when you try to use two items that are different and make them seem similar to one another.
When have I done this?
Comparable. What?
When have I done this?
I mean, you constantly...
When? Give me the specifics.
Bro. Really?
Yes, give me the specifics of when I conflated something. You've made the claim that I'm conflating things. Give me the specifics.
I'm saying I use the word as you conflate things, and so I've used the word to describe how you conflate them.
What have I conflated?
You have the tapes, man. Let's
what have
go through
I
the fucking
conflated?
Tapes.
You made the claim that I conflated something. Now you can't claim. Now you can't tell me what I've conflated.
No, I said you were conflating something. I demonstrated and told you how you were conflating it, and then we talked about it. So it's not like I just.
What was I conflating?
I have shown you several times how you were conflating. I don't remember the specifics of what they were.
Now, we won't even get into the fact that conflation is not when you say one thing is something else. Conflating is when you combine two things and you combine two things together and treat them as one thing. When have I done that?
That's exactly what my definition was, Captain Obvious.
No, it was not.
Do you have
your definition was when you replace something with something.
The conversation that we're having, I think you're so hung up on definitions and other things, man, that you're unable to just stay focused.
Show me where I conflated something.
Is that why you're going to therapy?
Show me where I conflated something. I'm waiting.
What do you mean you're waiting? I've already demonstrated to you how you were conflating.
What have I conflated?
Do you have an issue?
What have I conflated?
Rewind the tape.
Tell me specifically what I conflated.
I already did.
No, you didn't.
Past that.
No, you didn't.
Yes,
you never did.
The tapes don't lie, brother.
You have quite literally have never done it. So tell me what I've conflated.
The tapes don't lie.
Tell me what I've conflated.
The tapes don't lie. I already told you I don't remember what we spoke about. How long have we been talking?
So since you don't remember, I'm gonna assume I didn't do it. Next question is how much money are we betting that you brought up Christianity and said that the reason the ostracization exists is because Christians don't believe in this thing. How much do you want to bet that you said that?
I said people in general. That's who I was referring to. If I said Christians, it was a slip. Okay.
So you did say
that. If I said Christians, it was a slip.
Okay.
We were talking about spirituality.
Just was making
And
sure
I
that you
didn't
did
bring
say it.
Christianity into that either.
Great,
But,
so you did say it.
okay.
Thank you.
So if I said Christianity, I meant society in general all over the world.
Great. So your claim now is that the reason why trans people are ostracized is because society all over the world does not believe in people being trans. They have a disbelief, and because of this disbelief, right? Because of it, they are ostracized, and that disbelief does not the validity of trans people does not hold weight. Is this a correct reinterpretation of your stance?
The validity of trans people. What do you mean by that?
The validity of the science behind trans identities, the validity of the science of all the shit I just said to you about neurology and neurobiology, all of this.
No, the validity does hold weight. The problem is that because the validity of trans people exists, that there is ostracization because society in general all over the world does not agree with it and does not affirm.
Great.
Should we,
when it comes to what society believes, should we warp society to the belief of people as a whole, or instead should we focus society on what like scientific consensus is saying about different things?
Well, science doesn't work by consensus, first of all, and second of all, I think that we should allow society to determine what society wants and doesn't want.
I'm sorry. You think that science does not work by consensus?
Of course, science doesn't work by consensus. Are you ridiculous?
So you don't know what scientific
science doesn't work by consensus. Are you telling me science works by consensus? So science is a democratic process where if people vote on it,
do you know what scientific consensus means when I use that phrase?
Yes, I do know what consensus means. It is somewhat of an agreement between a collective intellectual body to affirm
when we say
from examining the evidence.
When we say that there's scientific consensus, what we mean is that the bulk of the scientific community has either researched or replicated research that leads to the same conclusion based off of a hypothesis. So yes, science actually does work by consensus because what you need is replicatable data to show that your hypothesis is correct. And if just one person is showing a hypothesis, that does not lead to scientific accuracy, right? You kind of have to have replicatable data when it comes to hypotheses, which would be the consensus.
Right. And so why does the consensus change?
Scientific consensus tends to change when we have new data. For instance, our understanding of trans people has shifted wildly since we've been able to study brains and like do brain scans and see and since we've developed the science behind like sociology and have been able to see how gender. Now, by the way, all of this started in like the early 1900s. Right? We're just re-catching up because all of the research was burned to the ground by Nazis. So we're re-catching up on all of this.
Wow. So you're saying that Nazis stopped the trans research? What?
I'm saying that
the new one.
I'm saying that Nazis specifically targeted LGBTQ individuals, including
Hitler did the whole cleansing of the porn of the Jewish people are disgusting for their depraved sexual ways, and we're going to rid the German people. I thought it was a book burning party that they had. It wasn't like.
Do you know what the pink triangle is?
The pink triangle, is that something that they made homosexuals wear?
They made people who are part of the LGBTQ community wear pink triangles like they made the Jewish people wear the Stars of David.
Yeah, they had the whole the Aryan race
specifically because of their beliefs in like Christian superiority and Christo nationalism. The Nazis would ostracize and attack anyone that didn't fit that vein. So they destroyed the Institute of Sexology, I think is the name of it, which was like the worldwide expert in like gender and sex research. They burned it to the ground along with all the research.
Well, they thought it was pornographic.
Yes,
I mean, the same thing is going on in Russia. There's no LGBT movement over in Russia because it's considered pornographic. And you can go to jail if you expose children to pornography.
And this is not it has nothing to do with what we're talking about. But this has, again, is why I said that the study of sex and gender has been around since the early 1900s. We just are recatching up on data that we had prior to that data being lost.
Let's come around full circle. So my point is that it was offensive back in the 1900s. The same as it's offensive today.
Why do I care if something? Okay. So because it's offensive, should we not allow it?
I think that we shouldn't try to force people into accepting it if they don't want to.
So
the same way we shouldn't force people to accept things that they don't agree in, like religion.
So we should not, just so that I have your stance correct, we should not force people to accept things that may be offensive to them, correct? That's your stance?
No, that's not my stance.
That's what you just said. So change your stance. So then what is your stance?
That we should have the right to offend people.
Okay, so trans people should be allowed to exist and identify as how they want to, because we should have a right to offend people.
Absolutely, and they should accept what comes along with, you know, their beliefs. The same way as if someone was like
what do you mean accept what comes along? So hold on. A trans person, trans women experience 4 times higher gendered violence than any other group. So trans women should just accept that they are beaten and killed higher at 4 times the higher rate than other people because they're trans. So they should just accept that this is happening to them.
Shouldn't we all accept things that are really happening? What are you saying? Like, should they not accept that that's really happening?
What do you think I mean when I say accept? What do you think I mean when I say accept? Accept means they should just lie down and take it. They shouldn't try to make society better.
No, they shouldn't. No, they shouldn't. No, okay. No, they shouldn't.
Okay. So when you say that people should
should accept that it's a reality.
Why does it have to be a reality? Wouldn't it be better to not allow the violence?
Yeah, but in reality, we're all just animals living by the laws of the jungle, aren't we? To some extent.
No, we quite literally don't live by the law of the jungle.
Well, yeah, we do.
We don't.
Of course we do.
We don't.
Okay, so if someone was walking down the street dressed as fucking Hitler and people started beating his ass, what's that?
Not the law of the jungle. What are you talking about?
Of course it is. That's vigilante, brutal justice.
So real quick. Nope. Earlier in the conversation, you said you cared about trans people unalive rates. Now you're saying they should just recognize that bad shit will happen to them because they're trans. They should just accept that bad things are going to happen to them. How is that caring about the unaliving rate?
If you walk through a bad neighborhood of Chicago at night, yeah, you need to accept that you're in danger. Yeah, I think people should be aware of their surroundings and be aware of, you know, where they're at. Yeah. So if in general trans people are ostracized and, you know, other things going against them, then they need to be aware of that. And I think it's their right to stand up and voice their opinion and defend their opinion, and, you know, more power to them. But it's just, you have to understand.
What number inconsistency is this? Like 5, 6, 18?
I don't know. Probably more than that, man. You know, like once we get in the comments, we'll probably get a list going. Maybe we should do one of those bingo things where every time they have like a logical fallacy, you do a little check mark. I think that'd be a good thing to do.
You've committed. I mean, the bulk of your logical fallacies is that you are you're engaging in appeal to the majority. Almost everything you keep saying is that
not appeal to the majority, appeal to reality.
You're appealing to the reality. No, you're appealing to the majority. You're saying because the majority of people believe...
You're appealing to the minority then?
No, you're claiming that... I don't appeal to a majority or a minority. I appeal to the science. But you're saying because the majority of people believe X... because the majority of people believe X, that X is okay.
If a certain percentage of the population is a minority, X is a minority, such as trans. So when you say that it's not majority, appeal to a majority or appeal to whatever, it is reality. That's what statistics are.
I don't think you know, I don't think you know how statistics work at all. What are you talking about? If there is a majority of people and the majority is X, and X represents the majority of the population, you believe that this majority's opinions are the ones that should be validated because they are the biggest group of people. It doesn't matter what may be ethical. It doesn't matter what may be scientific. It doesn't matter what may be moral. You believe that because X is the larger group of people, that their opinions are what is more important.
I'm saying that they have the freedom to decide what they want to do within their own communities. And that if someone has a differentiating, opinion, that they can go be free and do whatever they want.
Do you believe, this is going to be my last question, just to see if we have another contradiction. As you stated, the majority of people, X, should be allowed to decide what happens in their community overall. So my question to you is, if the majority of group X decides they no longer want black people in their community, should we allow them to not let black people into their community?
Okay, well, I think it comes down to a deeper situation of, can they prevent black people from, integrating into their community?
It's not about what they can allow. Your claim was that X representing the majority, and I even asked you if this was your stance, and you agreed that X representing the majority get to decide what happens in their community. Yes or no? Is that not your stance?
If they can physically determine what happens in their community, then yes, that's their right.
No, not if they can. I said, does X, are we saying that X as the majority get to, are they given the power to decide what happens in their community? Yes or no?
By the power of God, yes, they are.
So then by that given power, if they decide they do not want black people in their community, we should allow this community to do that because you believe that they should have the power to decide these things.
Well, I mean, you're kind of going to an extreme, a hypothetical that I don't believe would ever happen. But yeah,
you don't believe that communities would kick out black people? They've done it before.
Okay, I mean, so what? We also fought a civil war to change that. 680,000 white people died in order to, change that law. It's not a law anymore.
Whoop-de-doo. Oh my God, I'm so sad.
What do you mean whoop-de-doo? It changed the entire policy by which this country is governed. Yeah, that means something.
Oh, that's so sad.
Oh, did that hurt your feelings?
Quite literally did not.
Coming together and changing the Constitution
literally did not.
Give former slaves due process under the law, the freedom of speech, the right to bear arms. Does that offend you? I'm sure it does.
Who's offended? You're the one who is now. You're the one who's offended.
You're
the one who's now offended.
Change the law.
It's quite literally you who's being offended. I don't care that I don't care that all these people died in fighting in the Civil War. I don't give a fuck.
Okay, well, good for you. I think that's a little disingenuous, but by God.
How is that disingenuous? Disingenuous would be if I claimed to care and then showed that I didn't care. How would me clearly stating that I don't care be disingenuous?
Well, you taking part in enjoying the freedoms that they died for is a little disingenuous.
They didn't die for freedoms in the Civil War.
Of course they did.
No. Wait, why was the Civil War fought?
America is the freest country on the planet.
Why would the Constitution existed pre-Civil War, right?
Articles of Confederation?
No, the Constitution existed prior to the Civil War.
Right.
So why would I care?
Because it guarantees.
And in fact, here, let me change my stance. 360,222 deaths I care about in the Civil War. I don't give a fuck about 258,000 deaths. I don't give a fuck about those ones. I don't care about a single death on the Confederate side. Because why would I?
Okay. Well, there you go.
I'm sorry, do you think I should care about Confederate soldiers dying?
I mean, bro, I don't know how you got to me saying something that I never said or implying something that I never even implied. I just said I don't care about Confederates dying, and your response was wow. That was your response. Slavery. Yeah, that was your response. You're just like, I don't know, bro. You're so
should I care about dead Confederates? Yes or no?
I think you should care about dead people. Yes.
Nope. Should I care about dead Confederates? Yes or no?
It's your life, bro. I mean, do you want me to live your life for you, or you're entitled to your own opinion? And it doesn't matter to me. What
You're avoiding the question so hard. Why are you avoiding the question so hard?
I don't know, bro. It's your life. Should you? Do you want me to answer that? I don't know. No. If you want me to answer that, no, I don't personally think that you should.
Great.
But do you?
Then I'm not going to. Beautiful. So when I say I don't care about how many Confederates die, and you go, wow, the wow is kind of stupid now, isn't it?
So you always focus on the negative. Let's focus on the positive. So you do care about the Union soldiers that died in order to give independence and freedom to a group of people that didn't have it. You do care about that, right?
Sure. I will say I care about, I already admitted to this. I said I cared about the 380,000 deaths that were on the opposite side, because those people didn't have to die if the Confederacy weren't little bitches.
Okay, well, there you go. We agree on something. How do you like that? See,
Great.
You're not so bad after all, man. There's hope for you.
You're so brave that we agree that that the fucking Union was correct in the Civil War. I would hope you would agree with that.
Yeah. Hey, did you know that one of the generals in Lincoln's army actually freed a bunch of slaves, and Lincoln went and rounded them all back up, gave them back to the property owner, and court-martialed the general because slavery was only outlawed in the South?
When did I say I gave a fuck about Abraham Lincoln?
Well, I'm just saying, I thought it's a little interesting. It was something that kind of shocked me when I found out, because, I mean, there was this whole war going on to free slavery, but, you know, apparently...
Whoopee, when have I ever given a fuck about Abraham? I don't give a fuck about Abraham Lincoln.
Well, Abraham Lincoln was the first Republican, by God. You know what I mean? He freed the slaves and tried to give more individual liberty. So you don't care about freedom and liberty?
So brave for white people to correct the issues that white people started. Love that. Love that for them.
No, the whole world started, my friend. There was slavery long before white people.
Chattel slavery.
The word slave comes from the Slavic, from white people.
Chattel
60% of indentured servants were slaves.
Irish were never slaves. Chattel slavery.
The Irish were
indentured servants. Indentured servants are not slaves. Indentured servants were not slaves.
5 seconds on Google can clear this all up for you, man.
Yeah, here. Let's look up. Let's go to the University of Dublin. Right, we'll go to the. Do you think the University of Dublin, Irish's like biggest, Ireland specifically, biggest college, might have some insight into whether Irish people were taken from their lands and made slaves?
No, it was indentured servitude.
Oh, so indentured servants, so not slaves. Thanks.
But there was indentured servants that were for life. So
indentured servitude. If indentured servitude was for life, then it's not indentured servitude. No, well, indentured servants. If
you have a 200-year mortgage, that's for life.
Indentured servants are not slaves. They are quite literally indentured servants. That's the difference. They get to leave once they have paid off their debt. Whereas slaves are property. Indentured servants also had more rights than slaves had. For instance, indentured servants couldn't be whipped.
Now, slaves bought their freedom, too. What about one of the most brutal slave owners that had one of the most brutal slave plantations, was a prior slave that was freed and then became a slave breeder? And he was a black man. So he was a slave, so don't give me that shit.
People who are oppressed tend to side with people who are oppressed tend to try to side with the oppressor in order to avoid the oppressive acts that are being forced upon the rest of the people. Are you dumb?
No, I think you're delusional and hypocritical, but
I'm delusional.
Maybe that's
you believe in God, but I'm the delusional one. We already agreed that Christians are delusional, and you said you believe in God. Do you not?
So is that what you do? Is you just put words in people's mouths because you don't have a point to make otherwise?
I'm sorry. Did we not come to the conclusion that Christians are delusional?
Of course we did. Did I ever say that I was a Christian?
I asked you a question. I said, did you not? If you didn't, say no, I didn't. Do you know what a question is? Do you know what a question mark is when it comes at the end of a sentence?
A what? A question mark? What's that?
That's what I thought. Anyway, I'm going to move on because it's been an hour and a half. And I think, you've pretty much shown that you are incapable of actually saying a logical argument.